I'm still trying to get the article.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is it's because it's from the Foreign Policy magazine, and I have cut and copy pasted it. Um,
You can share it
yeah,
on the screen, James.
right. I'm just pasting it on Word. So give me 1 second, please. I'm just
I think it's really hard to understand power politics when we're
Oh,
not really interested in power.
That's one thing. Yeah, yeah. One thing about Laura is, I mean, she studies power and everything about it, but she's not interested in it. So probably same goes with me too. And so and probably it's about 1 second. Okay, so can I share? Can you activate the share
yeah, yeah,
screen?
I did. I did.
You already did. Okay, I think I should share it from my end. Uh, Give me a second. I copied it and I forgot to paste it, so it's getting pasted. Okay, here it is. So basically, what I would like to say before we start getting into this article is about that, as you know, politics is all based upon economics. And so we wouldn't be having this discussion if hadn't Chinese economic policy hadn't gone off on a tangent, and then it has become such an economic superpower. If it hadn't been, we wouldn't be discussing this. And this discipline of international relations is all about how states behave with each other. When it comes to differentials in their capacities, capabilities, studying those aspects, and the impact each nation state has on other states. So when a nation state it becomes an enormous economic superpower. These differentials automatically increase a lot. So this is basically the study of international relations, and this is how the discipline of international relations kind of started, understanding how states behave with each other. Uh, Also, probably, also we gain more strength because I see that Laura is already laughing there. Is also because they were trying to understand why white people went to war with each other in World War II. So, so it's up to you, whichever definition of IR you'd like to take. So here is a read by one of my favorite professors, is Professor Stephen Walt. Um, so Professor Stephen Walt is considered along with John Mearsheimer, is considered like, how would I put it, as one of the um, demigods of the theory of realism. So the discipline of IR is all based on many theories, and understanding these theories is like studying different religions, because these theories have taken on they're like a theology in themselves. Each theory is a theology in itself. So to understand international relations, you need to have a perfect uh, grasp of IR theories. Unless you understand the theories first, it's very difficult to understand, what actually is happening. And Stephen Walt, Professor Stephen Walt, is all about the theory of realism. And basically, I'll just tell you what realism is about. It's about how states are behave in reality, how they are. It's all about actual realism. It's about actual power, and you have other theories like neorealism and liberalism, neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is again different to the economic aspect of what we keep discussing in our talks, but this is again a different aspect. In IR, neoliberalism means something else. So we have constructivism, and you have IR feminism, and you have environmentalism. There are like so many, almost like 40 main theories in IR. And Stephen Walt is all about. He's the godfather of the theory of realism. And so this article will be based on realism. Do you want to add something else on realism, Laura? So that.
No, I think that's a good introduction.
Mm, mm,
I mean, but it's kind of the basis in
mm, mhm,
political science as well, isn't it?
mhm. Yeah,
And
I guess
and
so.
even then, I think that uh, we can, if we're talking about America, we can kind of attach these political theories back even further to there are some great books published about how this all came about. Western thought came from a conflict between Aristotle and Socrates, and then
Mhm,
kind of also morphed into this more modern conflict between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander
mhm,
Hamilton. If we're
mhm,
looking at what Stephen Walt says through a lens of kind of America's seeing its place in the world.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and so, Laura, the way we go about these, we usually have a couple of these readings every week. And suddenly, when I saw this, I thought, okay, we should call Laura. She would enjoy this. And so, how we go about this is we just, we go about reading, and we, stop in between, analyze the thing, and so you can just, s- you know, barge in whenever you want me to stop. So I'll just go about start reading the article now. So China wants a rules-based international order. Order two. The question is who gets to write the codes and whether the United States will live up to its own. So that is the question. So the rules-based order, and because I actually wanted to, thought we should discuss this because Mr. Ramu has been asking about the world order, how it's going to be shaped up and stuff. And I thought this would be an interesting read right away. And this was also written by Professor Stephen Walt. And so that's one thing. So I'm getting here. All right. Starts here. A ready ability to use the phrase rules based international order seems to have become a job requirement for a top position in the US foreign policy apparatus. One need look no further than Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's opening statement during his recent meeting with top Chinese officials. Our administration is committed to leading with diplomacy to advance the interests of the United States and to strengthen the rules based international order, he said. The alternative, he continued, is a world in which might is a world in which might makes right and winners take all. And that would be far more violent and unstable world for all of us. China, he seemed to be saying, is not only out to dismantle the US led order, but also out to bring back the days of might makes right. So when we discuss rules based order, we need to also look at the various treaties of the old. Um, I'm suddenly forgetting the one of the key treaties, Laura. Can you just
Well,
well,
Westphalia
yeah,
was the
yeah,
main
yeah,
one mentioned.
yeah. Starting with Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. Sorry, yeah, Treaty of Westphalia, wherein this is with the Treaty of Westphalia, the the concept of international relations sort of started because that is when the the most deadliest war ever that ever took place kind of culminated with the Treaty of Westphalia. The 30 Years War in Europe is considered the most deadliest war ever because Europe's land was considered to be soaked with blood, and um, the it ended in a way the regime of the Catholic Church, and also which also that from that point the Protestant movement came about. Certain princes, kings supported the Protestant church in a sense because they could relieve themselves of the regime of the Catholic Church, and so they kind of negotiated between themselves that each state would not interfere in the affairs of the other state. That was the key foundational aspect for the starting of international relations. And so that was one of the key treaties. And then you have many other treaties in major international treaties, coming on. It all they were all trying to set the rules of how uh, each state would behave towards each other. And that is this, in a sense, the main essence of the Treaty of Westphalia of 1648 still exists today. It is the essence of non-interference in other states. It still remains true even today. So it all goes back to that. Yes, Laura.
And I think that there's some interesting comparisons here
Mhm,
between how the Treaty of Westphalia pointed out the deficiencies in rule by the church,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
at the time, the aristocracy, kings and queens, really felt that there was some kind of conflict between we are supposed to be ordained by God to
mhm,
lead the people, so why is the church leading us?
mhm,
And we kind of see the same comparison now in the United States, where we're struggling with the idea of plutocracy and rule by the elites um, when they have failed to lead well. So, and not only that, but it violates the foundations of what a democratic society means to most Americans.
mhm,
So it's kind of an interesting transition into rejecting Rome,
mhm,
um, and of course the Eastern Orthodox Empire has taken a slightly different approach to how they ruled the people.
mhm. Which is again a study in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So it is from this point of Treaty of Westphalia, 1648, states have been, more or less trying to establish, a rules-based order and so on and so forth. And then you had the French Revolution and Napoleon, changed everything. One second. Uh, Drawing, sir. Can you just hold on 1 second? Hello, sir. Hello. Namaste. Mummy, no, డ్రాయింగ్ సార్. సార్ రండి సార్, అంటే మదర్ తీసుకుంటారు క్లాసు, నేను కొంచెం మీటింగ్లో ఉన్నాను. ఓకే. Yeah, sorry about that. And you had, sorry, you had Napoleon changing the game in Europe, and all colonial empires at that juncture too, because he wanted to export revolution. And again, all of them got together, defeated him finally, and again they wanted to have, after the defeat of Napoleon, they again had a treaty, and so I'm forgetting what that treaty was. There was, like, all these, to understand world order, it is very important to go back and study these treaties. And why I'm emphasizing on these treaties, I'll get back to you in a minute. So let's get to the second thing. But the distinction between the United States' supposed commitment to a system of rules and China's alleged lack thereof is misleading. This is a very powerful statement in at least three ways. First, it overlooks the United States' own willingness to ignore, evade, or rewrite the rules whenever they seem inconvenient. If we are honest with ourselves, we have to acknowledge that Washington sometimes thinks it is perfectly okay for might to make right and for winners to take all. The collapse of the Soviet Union, when the United States took full advantage of a weakened post Soviet Russia, is a perfect example. So basically, he's, saying it's, United States wants to have the cake and, have it all. And so now that China, in a way, is essentially taking the place of the Soviet Union. Um, so it's, United States is really, in a way, not really liking the situation, and so it's saying, okay, we need to follow rules and all that. But Stephen Walt says, nada, United States, you never did that. Second, as Harvard University's Alastair Ian Johnston has shown, China accepts and even defends many principles of the existing order. That's something. Although, of course, not all of them. That situation may change in the future, of course, but even a vastly more powerful China would undoubtedly seek to retain whatever features of the present order serve its interests. Third, statements such as Anthony Blinken imply that abandoning today's rules-based order would leave us in a lawless, rule-free world of naked power politics, unregulated by any norms or principles whatsoever. This is simply not the case. Scholars of widely varying views understand that all international orders, global, regional, liberal, realist, or whatever, require a set of rules to manage the various interactions that inevitably arise between different polities. So he says he's simply refuting Anthony Blinken's statement here, Stephen Walt. He says he doesn't accept that. And one more thing is that there, whatever the situation, there, Stephen Wald is saying that there has to be some set of rules. Even so, it could be opposing to US, but the opposing side would still be following a set of rules to engage with each other. Because if states need to engage with each other, they need to have a certain amount uh, of, of of principles, sets of protocols. They have protocols, all that they need to follow. Without that, states cannot engage with each other. So when we are talking of, some of the existing rules that China is still following or still accepting. I'd like to talk of two things here. One is the Bretton Woods system, and one is the George Marshall Plan. When you're talking about the world order and order, a rules based global order, um, we should immediately look, we were looking at World War II, and before World War II culminated, even before World War II ended in 1945, I think the Bretton Woods system was formulated in 1944. Laura, I think it just happened just before World War II ended.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it was because I remember, because about 40 nations came together to formulate a monetary policy between themselves.
Yeah,
That is,
mid,
yeah, this
but
was, yeah, go ahead.
but it ended when we started disassociating currencies from the US dollar,
Yeah,
or
right.
from
That
gold, I believe.
right, from gold. You're right.
From gold, yeah.
That happened in 1971. But it is important to understand the Bretton Woods system, because they were trying to put together the a rules-based order for how financial transactions takes place, how the economy moves between all these countries, and how the United States basically wanted uh, the currency of each country to be pegged to the dollar, pegged to their gold. And United States had the largest reserves of gold then, and so they wanted this to happen because they wanted to make sure that a world war does not happen again, so that nations won't go to war on these things. So they were trying to put together a rules based system for financial transactions, and how each nation state formulates its economic policies and all that. So this was the Bretton Woods system. Even then, Soviet Union, did not ratify it. Soviet Union also said, like, no, this is going to be a hegemony of the United States, and that we're not going to be part of it. But still, the US was able to put together a good number of states, and they were able to ratify the Bretton Woods system. I think this is how I remember it. So that was that. And after that, we had the Marshall Plan. So Ramagar, have you heard of the George Marshall Plan?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, George Marshall was the Secretary of State at
Correct,
that.
correct,
Yeah,
correct.
after after the World War ended, and immediately they put a reconstruction plan for Japan, all the major countries in Europe that got devastated by the World War II, and Australia, and all that. So this was the George Marshall Plan. So they were trying to put together an international system by having these treaties, and this all culminated in the setting up of the United Nations. And as Professor Kopsev always kept reminding us, the UN is a military organization, not a peaceful organization. And so likewise, all these organizations, the United Nations, WTO, or the organization which is in the news lately, the World Health Organization, and you have the UNESCO, and you can name a number of organizations. All these were set up post World War II for the functioning of a rules-based global order. So these organizations take on the role of ensuring that states have some have some form of they're able to follow some set of rules. So we have that then also the Bretton Woods system. I think it culminated in the World Bank. I think so. I'm not sure, but you have World Bank. I think it was the IMF. Sorry, not the World Bank.
IMF, yeah.
Yeah. The Bretton Woods system culminated in the IMF, and then IMF is part of the World Bank, or is it different? I'm not sure. This
I believe they're two separate
I
entities.
think so. All right.
Uh, kind of like one is more focused on monetary and the other one might be more
Mm-hmm.
focused on fiscal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, all right. So anyway, all these institutions have were set up or have been set up by more or less by the strong backing of the United States, and this aspect of looking at IR, international relations, is known as neoliberalism. So whereas the world order is run by institutions. So this is where what Trump did by exiting these institutions was such a big deal to people who understood what was actually happening. Uh, so what's your nana? Okay, right. So we come back to now. I think he gets back to into theory now. Examples can be found throughout the international relations literature. 44 years ago, theorist Hedley Bull again is like one of the top realist theorists. Hedley Bull defined an international society as a group of states bound by a set of common rules. And the University of Chicago professor John Mearsheimer recently referred to international orders as an organized group of international institutions, which we were just talking about, which he says are effectively rules that the great powers devise and agree to follow. The statesman Henry Kissinger argues that all world orders rest on a set of commonly accepted rules, and the Princeton University professor G. John Eikenberry's many works on the US led liberal order all emphasize its rules based character. The political scientists Beth Simmons and Hein Gomans agree, writing, any intergroup order must be defined by rules of group membership and political authority. Even skeptics of the liberal order, such as the scholar Patrick Potter, acknowledge the role that rules play within that system, while emphasizing how the United States has used its superior power to compel other states to comply with the rules it prefers. Laura, you want to take a crack at that?
I don't think the United States knows what rules it prefers. It's, I mean, uh, from on the ground here, there has been something deeply troubled by the people on the street being controlled and analyzed and basically confined to a life of modern slavery by, again, white men sitting in ivory towers talking about how they think the rules of the world should be.
Mhm.
And I think that there are a lot of people that are challenging those rules. And we see it also in like definance, in
Mhm.
cryptocurrencies, in what happened with GameStop.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, but social media and technology has started to really challenge
Exactly. Mhm.
the structures of the Western economy.
Mm.
And it's also a lot of people on the ground starting to really understand that democracy means that they don't want their economy controlled by these people. They don't want their entire lives
Mhm.
controlled by,
Mm.
less than 1%
Mm.
of our country.
Mm. Mm.
So I think that has a lot of implications in how we view the rest of the world and also how other countries are going to behave. I'm not sure where China uh, sits on the spectrum. I mean, they seem to crush any dissidents against the government very quickly. However, we can see with the pandemic that there has been, and I think there will be more backlash, considering how they handled it. And it's going to be from their own citizens as well.
Mhm.
So
How-
I think the rules, when we talk about the rules and who's making the rules, it's a lot less fixed than
Mm, mm,
people writing articles would like to think.
mhm. Yeah.
Maybe this is why I'm the outlier in the US, right? Harvard wouldn't go near me with a
Yeah,
10-foot pole.
that is because we are, out and out realists, Laura, and and people don't like to hear realism,
Yeah,
realist
but
section. Yeah,
can you be a realist when you are ignoring 99% of the
yeah,
global population?
yeah, yeah,
That's just,
yeah.
I don't think that's realism. That's
Mm,
just being naive
mm, mm.
or or colonial.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is,
We're
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
it is,
yeah,
it
yeah.
is,
we're
it is.
still trapped in
Mhm,
colonial mindset, and
mhm,
all
mhm,
of the kind of evils of the British
mhm,
Empire were really adopted by America, and we
mhm,
are just as bad, if
mhm.
not worse. We might be worse.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, you are the whole of America is migrates from US or UK, isn't it? You will be definitely worse.
Not not all of us. I mean,
Most of them,
um,
probably your
yeah,
forefathers.
most of them. I mean, my own heritage is entirely Eastern European, Greek, Jewish, and I can say that just growing up in America in this time frame has been a challenge. There's
Exactly.
racial violence directed at people like me because we are not considered white, which it's just ridiculous. So America is still struggling with itself, and I think a lot of people of what made us strong in the first place was our diversity, and our diversity now is willing to speak up and assert its power, and
Mhm,
I hope it continues.
mhm.
Right, right.
Yeah. And now that, US is unable to impose anything on China at the moment, because it's trying to set up its own uh, kind of IMF with the Shanghai Corporation cooperation. I'm not sure if I don't know if you've heard of it, and so which is mostly based for Southeast Asian countries. Um, so they're doing things like that, and there's no way they're able to punish China. They're even able to punish Russia with so many sanctions. But try doing that with China.
Yeah,
So,
but China is also kind of walking itself into a lot of trouble too.
mm-hmm,
Again, the power of diversity and democracy
mm-hmm,
have not gone unnoticed to the Chinese people. And what there are over 900 to 1,000 languages in China,
mm-hmm,
I believe, and there are also a lot of different factions that resent rule by Beijing and the Han Chinese.
mm-hmm,
So when we look historically at what the Chinese empires were, they were always strong, and they would ebb and flow between authoritarian rule and kind of this divine right of empire
mm-hmm,
versus open trade and democracy and acceptance.
mm-hmm,
Not democracy as the Western ethos views it, but they had their own kind of openness in their history. And I don't know what they're kind of going to run themselves up against a brick wall with the way they're treating people. It's only a
mm-hmm,
matter of time before they either have a ton of revolution and backlash, just from cultural and ethnic and religious populations, and also environmental conflict. And those are the two big question marks that everyone is leaving out in terms of political theory. And it's the world we live in is not like the world that they are analyzing in the past. We have over 7 billion people. We are hitting the confines of what this planet can sustain in terms of human life. And that leads to so much inequality, and there's only it's only a matter of time before the bottom billion or several billion have something to say about it.
Right. This is a very important point you've made there. So let's see that.
I mean, I'm really interested in what China has to say for itself, because I hear a lot of Westerners speaking for China. And I hear them also speaking for a lot of Africa and India and South America, and we don't even ask what is on the mind of the billion people in India that are often left out of this conversation.
Right. All right. Okay. So let's get into the next paragraph. In short, the issue is not the United States' preference for a rules-based order and China's alleged lack of interest in it. Rather, the issue is who will determine which rules pertain where. All right. Or, as Iran Corporation's Michael Mazar recently put it, at its core, the United States and China are competing to shape the foundational global system, the essential ideas, habits, and expectations that govern international politics. It is ultimately a competition of norms, narratives, and legitimacy. So I think legitimacy plays a real important role here, and U.S. has taken a huge beating in that sense in the last 4 years. Um, so so there is going to be, and as still U.S. still has something to offer to other states, and in terms of ideological basis, just as Soviet Union did before it collapsed. But what
Well,
does China have to offer in terms like that?
the thing that keeps the US in the conversation is it's innovation. We're constantly pushing the envelope in technology, environment, things like that. Right now, China has stolen a lot of it, but they are starting to develop their own. So again, it's something to watch, because I think that whoever is going to, if we want to look at it through the economic lens, whoever is going to have the most amount of people participating in the economic system and the financial system is going to be the winner. And for the most part, that has not been the World Bank or the IMF. They have excluded just too many people. So I think that this kind of interplay between technology and finance is going to be a major deciding factor in who becomes more successful
Very good. Yes.
hegemonically.
Yeah. I agree with you with that.
And the second component of that is also who is going to bring more environmental justice, and how do we get that into the conversations? Because we are already in global armed conflict over natural resources.
This is the most pertinent and most essential aspect which all of us need to look at, and everyone should be looking at. And who wrote The Coming Anarchy, Laura? I'm forgetting the. It was.
Oh gosh.
You remember that, right? Uh,
Yes.
uh,
Uh, oh God, it's
Unbelievable.
Tom
No, not Trump. No,
Robert
no.
Kaplan.
Robert Kaplan.
Yes.
Robert Kaplan. Right. Robert Kaplan. I think we need to have a relook at it. Robert, that work, that piece of work Kaplan has written. I think it should be online somewhere. Um, there. So,
Yes, and he's actually a neo-realist too,
mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm,
he's starting to move into territory almost of uh environmental justice, and
uh-huh.
I dare say Vandana Shiva.
Okay. Right, because I've read Kaplan a very long time ago, so I must have a relook at it so that I might understand it differently now, and I'll just fill in Mr. Ramu about Robert Kaplan. Robert Kaplan, Ram Garu, has written a very serious article on what's going to happen with the environment issue. It's the title of the article is "The Coming Anarchy," and he writes about not about armed conflict or uh, states going to war with each other because of egos, but what's going to happen, that they're going to go to war, there's going to be conflict because of environment issues. So it's a very very important read. I'll try to find it and send it to you. And
You gotta do that.
yeah, so that's the so it's okay. Let's go to the next paragraph. The differences between the American and Chinese conceptions are relatively straightforward. Okay, let me read that again. The differences between the American and Chinese conceptions are relatively straightforward. The United States generally prefers a multilateral system, albeit one with special privileges for some states, especially itself. That is at least somewhat mindful of individual rights and certain core liberal values. This is what just Laura was talking about. Democratic rule, individual freedom, rule of law, market-based economies, and so on. Right. So these ideals may be applied imperfectly at home and pursued inconsistently abroad. But the US commitment to them is not just empty rhetoric. Among other things, it underpins US efforts to persuade or compel other states to alter their own domestic arrangements. Not surprisingly, the United States also likes many existing institutions, the IMF, NATO, the World Bank, the reserve roll of the dollar, to name a few, because they give the United States greater influence. Right. Hmm. Okay. So I think we just discussed this thing just now, and I'm going into the next paragraph. By contrast, China favors a more Westphalian conception of order, right? One where state sovereignty and non interference are paramount, and liberal notions of individual rights are downplayed, if not entirely dismissed. So, we were just discussing this part. This vision is no less rules based, right? Okay. So, here's where, Wall says, okay, this vision is no less rules based than the United States. He's not saying whether this is right or wrong. He's saying that this is still rules based insofar as it draws on parts of the United Nations Charter, and it would not preclude many current forms of international cooperation, including extensive trade, investment, collaboration on vital transnational issues such as climate change. China is also a vocal defender of multilateralism, even if its actual behavior sometimes violates existing multilateral norms. Nonetheless, a world in which China's preferences prevailed would be different than one in which the US vision proved to be more influential. Hmm. So more or less, they still, both the U.S. and China have s- still uh, some visions of which where they're not in conflict at. But still, it's about hegemony. Who's going to? China believes that U.S. Does not want it to become the hegemonic power, and so it will do everything it can to ensure that the order which United States is trying to impose is does not succeed. I think it's more about that. So it's. I think this is all realist theory. What Walt is talking
It,
about.
it is, and
Uh,
I
mm,
mean they're leaving out again some
mhm,
major
mm,
conflicts of human morality,
mhm,
basically.
mm, mm, mm,
I think there are a
mm,
lot of people around the world questioning what right does the nation state have
mm,
to murder people
mm,
and oppress them.
mm.
And we see this in China with the treatments of Tibet, of the
Yes.
Uyghurs, of Hong Kong.
Mm, mm,
And also, unfortunately, now we really felt that in the United States.
mm, mhm,
And we see it ongoing through George Floyd. I
mhm,
mean, they're still trying to justify and villainize him as a drug addict when he
mm,
wasn't,
mm,
uh, and make it that the might is right again
mm.
with the
Again,
police
yes,
in
yeah.
this
Mm,
in this
mm,
case. And
mm,
I think there are a lot of people that are starting to question,
mm,
here the nation state has promised to keep us safe, protect our country from outside forces, and yet we're falling apart on the inside and they're killing us on the inside.
mm, mm. The whole concept of the nation state is begging, it's begging question. Mm.
Well, and they didn't
It is.
uphold their end of the bargain, which is
Right.
to
Mm-hmm.
provide peace and security for
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
that live within the nation state's borders.
Yeah.
So there's a serious existential crisis going on.
Exactly. That's very serious. I think I seriously believe that the um, the concept of the nation state itself, which has been around 300 years, right? After empires have fallen, and now it was taken over. The concept of empires has been taken over by the nation state, and so it's been there for a while. And we had two world wars. I mean, other smaller wars were there after the this thing, but I think it is under strain now. That concept is going to be under the strain, and especially more with the environmental crisis, which is going to envelop us more sooner than later. So that would, more than political ideologies, I think this would be a crisis. This would, the environmental issues would put a strain on the entire structure of a nation state. And yeah, I think they we'll see what's going to happen. I mean, we could theorize, what could happen, but at this moment, I think it would be under strain. I can't predict what's going to happen.
Well,
Um,
I think it's
mm,
already
mm,
happening.
mhm,
You
mm,
see, for example, you see a lot of indigenous populations in the Amazon appealing
mm.
to the international community and bypassing the nation state that governs the Amazon
Oh yes. Uh,
entirely.
uh-huh.
And there are a lot of communities around the world that are starting to bypass their national governments in efforts to get international support. It's
Mhm,
also starting in the United States. Don't buy palm oil, things like that. Don't buy uh, cash crops in places that
mhm,
also
mhm,
support the pandemic.
mhm,
Unfortunately, coronaviruses were not the first kind of environmental impact of the corporate agricultural system.
Mhm.
And there are a lot worse viruses out there. They just
Mhm.
haven't gone pandemic. And
Mhm.
I think that a lot of people are starting to wake up to the fact that what they put on their table matters.
Mhm.
Um, and there's also a whole kind of industry and rise of smaller companies that are trying to go for fair trade foods and beauty products
Mhm.
and kind of tackle that corner of the markets.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, they're much more focused on having diversity rise instead of corporations or nation state.
Mhm. You're right. You're absolutely right. Now I recall a couple of months ago, I was reading an article. I'm not sure who's written it, but it was more or less written, I think, in Professor Walt's style. The article was basically giving um, you know the amount of you know impact of the global impact of Amazonian forest, and and Amazon forest a couple of months ago was just totally being destroyed by fire. And if you don't have the Amazonian forest, it was talking about the various weather patterns that are going to change across the world. So if
And,
that could, yeah, if that could happen, there's
and
going to, yeah, go ahead.
the alarming indicator was that the
Mhm.
fires of the Amazon are releasing more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than the existing Amazon forest can absorb,
Mhm. Mhm.
which you know is a very severe turning point. It means that there is no going backwards, that
Mhm.
we have dramatically altered the balance of
Mhm.
what that forest has done for
Mhm.
life on the planet.
Mhm. And so, if the article argues that if at certain point they feel, a group of states would feel that, that it is about to, reach the tipping point, or it has gone across the tipping point, and we need to do something about it. And they might just come in and get involved in Brazil without, so in that way, so in that sense, the Westphalian order, it would be falling apart because of an environmental issue. So, this is one very serious thing which could happen, and we could see things, see these things happening, where, So even as you're right, the it is already happening. There is
And
already under. Yeah,
the
go ahead.
Westphalian nation state system has so much interference from international governmental organizations
Mm-hmm.
or
I understand.
corporations
Mm-hmm.
that they are no
Mm-hmm.
longer in
Mm-hmm.
charge. I mean, in
Exactly.
America, we don't live in a
Uh-huh.
democracy. We live in
Right.
an oligarchy.
Mm.
Um,
Likewise.
and
Mm.
yeah, I'm not
Mm.
necessarily sure if it's going to be armed conflict, but if
Mhm.
every single person in the United States and Europe decided not to buy anything from Brazil because of what they're doing to the Amazon, it would definitely hurt.
Mhm.
um,
Mhm. Mm.
we'll kind of see what happens with the social media and the media
Mhm.
around that. I'm not
Mhm.
entirely sure. It's very hard to
Mhm.
also
Mhm.
get agreement over what people should do because there are far too many people that are comfortable in their day-to-day norm and
Mhm.
not willing to make changes because
Mhm.
it affects a faraway place.
Mhm.
So it's yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Okay, let's get to the next paragraph. I don't know which of these two visions will win out in the years ahead, but a few observations are in order. First, if you think the United States and its closest allies are going to write all the rules themselves, think again. International orders inevitably reflect the underlying balance of power, And China's rise means that its ability to shape some of the rules or to refuse to go along with rules that it rejects will be considerable. Okay, we kind of discussed this already. Second, and following from the first point, no single power can write and enforce all the rules of an order. The United States got most of what it wanted during the creation of the Bretton Woods system and had enormous influence over the subsequent evolution of that order. But it still had to compromise on a number of issues, and it frequently failed to get everything it wanted. The United States and China are going to have a great deal of influence over the rules that emerge either globally or within whatever partial orders each might lead. But to gain others' compliance, this will still have to give other states at least some of what they want to, which is really right. So I just want to jump in about, sir, you've heard of, we all know about SARC. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So a lot of SARC is, it's a regional corporation in South Asia. So
Okay.
it's basically India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, Maldives. It's about 7 or 8 countries, countries which fall under the South Asian, context. And so, whereas India is, the largest, most powerful within this grouping, and even then, I would say that uh, the country on which India has the most influence would be Maldives of all these, because the other states are aligned with other powerful actors. So so in this sense,
To some extent, Sri Lanka was also with us for some time. Sri
for some
Lanka and
time,
Nepal. Sri
yeah.
Lanka and Nepal.
Yeah, Sri Lanka and Nepal, and
Yes.
both we kind of pushed them away, sir.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it was this idiotic government. They were all fine. They were quite fine with us until the present government decided to show them, like, okay, that show them muzzle. They're small states, and so they just you said, okay, we'll be friends with China.
Oh, did that have something to do with our president going over there and
Well, no, no, I don't think Trump went to Sri Lanka or Nepal.
no, but he met with Modi several times.
Oh
And
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
yeah. They're great friends.
They're great friends.
Oh God.
Both of them are rightists.
So
Oh,
so in this sense, I just wanted to explain it to Mr. Rabu, that about regional groupings and how India has been just grappling with just SARC, and this is how what China is trying to do, with its own set of regional groupings in all that, and so it will also have its own stresses and strains, because these small states, even though they don't have a lot of firepower, but still they would be doing a lot of bargaining in the sense of they have some kind of negotiating capability in terms of saying that, okay, we'll just shift to the other group. And so we're looking at the onset, or I think the bipolar system has already in place now, almost in place. um, so it is back. The bipolar system is back. In a sense, that is what his Walt is saying.
okay.
Ah, yeah. Okay. And what
It's
is?
kind of, huh. That's how sustainable do you think these
Uh,
agreements are? I mean, at the end of the day, it seems like one country in
mhm.
any kind of open zone is always interested in bullying the other countries.
Uh, yeah.
So, as we can see with the EU, what do you think the future is there?
It is. I would say at this juncture, because see, in when we were at AGS, I think we could actually predict a future uh, at those time. It was after the first decade of after 2000 until maybe for during those years, that decade and a half. I think we were still able to um, understand there. Okay, there's going to be some kind of a future. Um, and I mean, they were able to put behind Bush, and there was like Obama, and and all that, and who turned out to be, another neoliberal himself, and he didn't start any wars. He's very smooth, very suave, and and all that. Great intellectual guy, but still, in the end, he still was neoliberal, and what some scholars have been writing about Biden is that he was a neoliberal himself, but he's changing because of the progressives. So progressives are the socialists are in the U.S. Socialists are called as progressives in the U.S. And Biden is taking a lot of pressure due to the progressives. So let us see, because it all depends on how these both countries evolve. A lot depends on how these countries are going to evolve. And
It's again, it's
uh-huh.
the realists in America speaking for everyone else when it's
Uh-huh.
not their turn anymore. Like,
Yeah.
please sit down and be quiet.
Yeah.
They've already ruined us.
Mm-hmm.
And uh they are just mad because they can't continue to steal from the American people. But for example, it's all in what's the book we just got? Goliath. Here.
Goliath. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I have it right here. Are you all reading it?
And I'm going to order it. I'm going to order it. Uh,
I mean, it it says on one of the quotes to chapter 2
mhm,
that the majority of the world revolts from popular rule from time to time, but
mhm,
it's the rich that refuse to be governed at all.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
that is exactly
Mm,
what the realists in America are doing. I
mhm,
mean, it's just unbelievable. So they have backed Biden into a corner just as much as the progressive because they
mhm.
have been completely unwilling to even engage in a debate unless they get their way. And
I didn't know
you
this. Okay.
can't negotiate with bullies. You just
Right.
can't.
Right.
They are not willing to give on anything. Like
Mm.
our roads in America are worse than places that you took me in India.
Mm, mm,
It's
yeah.
reality.
Yeah. Mm, mm,
And they're now arguing
mm,
over using taxpayer money or even a small percentage of
mm,
tax money
mm,
from
mm,
corporations to pay for the infrastructure of our country.
mm, mhm,
They
mm,
absolutely refuse. They
mm.
want
Yep.
the American population to be in the dark because we can't afford our energy bills,
Mm,
driving cars everywhere through pothole ridden roads like we're somewhere in Africa. It's just, and why? So they can steal and not negotiate.
mhm, mhm. Basically, that's that's about it.
it's
Mm,
it's like they don't understand that
mm,
they have lost their right to
mhm.
criticize Biden
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because he is the only one who's still willing to even talk to them.
Ah.
The if Bernie had won,
Uh-huh.
it would be a very different conversation.
Right. Mm. And so the neoconservatives are still up and running.
Oh yeah, and I
Ah.
mean even
Do you want to quickly tell about neoconservatives to Ramu?
um
Brief,
uh,
just like 2 3 sentences. Just give him.
God, which context are we talking to? Economic, do you mean?
Say
Or
it's both. Give it the economic and foreign policy. both.
Oh, okay. We've really had like layers upon layers of a
Yeah.
return to conservatism in the U.S., both with religion. I mean,
Mm.
bringing up abortion debates, all of these things
Mm.
that the United States thought that it handled in the 60s and 70s
Mm.
have now been revisited.
Mhm.
And I think the root cause is really the Electoral College and the fact that we are not a representative democracy. So there, I live in the south of the United States, and there has been so much gerrymandering and control by conservative factions. They can't even call themselves Republican anymore. The departure from the Republican Party and fiscal conservatism has been so dramatic that it's kind of it's gone back to Jim Crow days, or
Mhm.
even the days of slave owners.
Mhm.
And there are so many different tensions economically, racially. Um, they've declared war on the intelligentsia, which it's almost like they want to be like Stalin or Lenin and kill off anyone with higher education
Mhm.
and just dive into authoritarianism. So the neoconservatism is as far right as the Taliban,
Mhm.
and the thing
Mhm.
is that the the far reaches of the right in the US are mimicking our worst enemies, which
Which in sense, like, no one is ever talking about this is the thing which I see the same thing, that that the far right, the neoconservatives are as same or are equal or to the Taliban, um, but more people need to be
and
talking about it.
they keep saying that the Democrats and the progressives have created that backlash, but I'm
Mm,
really struggling to
mm, mm,
understand how, because Biden is still trying to open conversations. He's always trying to go across the aisle.
mm,
That's kind of his key word. And there's just nothing he can do. There's so much interference. I think it's also really important to mention the media control. We know that the Russians have hacked the Department of Defense. We
mm,
know about Russians and other countries planting fake news just across the board.
mhm,
And I mean, the amount of people that believe QAnon, or the fact that Bill Gates is going to somehow implant a microchip in the COVID vaccines is just
mm,
it's astounding.
yeah, yeah. The numbers, I mean, okay, people believing that stuff, I mean, okay, that's not surprising, but the numbers that are believing this stuff is
Yeah, and
astronomical. I mean, enough to put a guy in the president's office. That's the
and
numbers that are believing this kind of fake news stuff, all this
the
ridiculous.
irony is
Mm, mm,
that all of these rural areas and small towns where people, or very conservative churches where
mhm,
people are more inclined to believe these kinds of things,
mhm.
they're the ones that have suffered most at
Yes.
the
Uh-huh.
conservative fiscal policies.
Mm,
So under Trump, they gave a lot of bailouts, and all of the money was going to Trump's friends, to Mitch McConnell. And there was something in there about agricultural policy, because
mm,
we've had the price of food
mhm,
skyrocket here, which is something that most Americans are just not used to. Um, and all of the money in Trump's bailout for agricultural businesses went to the largest farms. And
mm,
literally, the farmers
mm,
are getting together in Iowa. They're already owned by corporations, um, and talking about, well, we don't even know how to spend this kind of money, but we're sure as hell not giving it back. And we're sure as we're
uh-huh.
definitely not going to create more jobs,
Mhm,
or
mhm,
the goal is to consolidate their power as much as possible. And it's just
Yeah.
all of these people that have been marginalized by conservative politics are somehow the ones who are most vulnerable and most believing. And they still believe that they're going to shape the narrative for what America wants to be. And they don't understand that they've already kind of lost.
Right. Great. Great. So let's get back to the next paragraph. It is third, China's emergence and to a much lesser extent, Russia's regional sway gives other countries more options than they had during the unipolar era. We were just talking about the countries, states having more options. Iran may be suffering mightily under US sanctions, but its recent oil and investment deal with China reveals its ability to reduce the pressure somewhat without making additional concessions to the United States. So you know the deal, how much the deal is worth between Iran and China? It's
No,
it's it's
no.
$400 billion, sir.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, who shot themselves at the foot now? But still, yeah, in some ways, Iran has surrendering is surrendering its sovereignty to China. It's bound to happen. It's going to happen with a $400 billion deal. That's bound to happen. But
Is it too late? How much
literally,
oil is actually left?
they're going to build a railroad into Iran. So it's all there is, because I've already built a railroad into Pakistan. It's up and running, and so they're going to build another one into Iran, and so yeah, they're giving it security, and they don't give a hoot whether Iran gets nuclear weapons. Same with Russia; it doesn't give a hoot if Iran gets nuclear weapons. And they're simply forgetting the regional dynamics there in the Middle East, and all that. And so that's what we'll leave it there and get to the hmm, yeah, and its recent oil and investment deal with China reveals its ability to reduce the pressure somewhat without making additional concessions to the United States. Europe may be thrilled to see former US President Donald Trump gone and delighted by President Joe Biden's desire to repair transatlantic ties. But that sense of relief.
I sorry, I
Yeah,
have
go
to
ahead.
interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I don't know a lot about China, but I did work in an all Chinese company and studied it quite a bit. And my suspicion is that they are not at all attempting to reduce the pressure. They are
Mm,
definitely increasing the pressure on
mhm,
Iran.
mhm,
And it's the same thing. The
mm,
enemy of my enemy is my friend.
mhm. Yeah.
So it's,
Mm,
and not only that, but it fits into their regional
mhm,
geopolitics
mhm.
of how they see themselves in the world. They don't
Yeah.
believe that they are
Mm,
a developing country. They
mm.
believe that they are an empire and trying
Yes.
to
Yeah.
reclaim themselves.
Mhm. Exactly. I remember meeting Iranians. Most of the Iranians in Europe, they prefer to call themselves as Persians. They don't. Yeah, they don't. They like to. They don't like to be called as Iranian. They say we're Persian. So it was rather surprising for me, but of course, yeah, that is
Can
there.
can we blame them after the
No.
amount of British and American interference in the
Mm,
past century?
mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
they too were the seed of great empires.
Oh, of
It's
course, absolutely. Persian civilization was something else before the Islam thing took over. They've where it's like, it was the thing, it was the language, it was the language of the courts across South Asia, not just Iran, you
Sure.
know. So, and still they have, probably their the remnants of their civilization, their palaces, their forts, and all that. I don't think they're matchless. They're equal to Egypt and what survives of Persian civilization, and probably more than Egypt in some ways, Persepolis and stuff. So yeah, so. And delighted by President Joe Biden's desire to repair transatlantic ties. But that sense of relief hasn't led Germany to cancel the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So this is very important. This has been going on for the past 15 years. The Nord Stream thing, have you been following it, Laura? Nord Stream.
No.
Uh-huh. So, it's the pipeline from Russia to Germany.
Okay.
And yeah, and US really, really doesn't want Germany to have that. And so they have a Nord Stream 1, and again they have the Nord Stream 2. Um, okay. And so uh, because kind of the images, like EU and the US are like hand in glove on so many things. It's like the how multilateralism works, all that. But Germany goes ahead and does a deal, and it's going ahead with the Nord Stream 2. And
Ha-
yeah.
have
Yeah.
you both read this?
um Sir, I was asking if I left this book at your place.
No, no. Yeah, I didn't get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Have you read it though?
No, no. I lost
Okay.
that book among all my.
Okay.
Yeah, I need to. Yeah, it's on my list. I need to order it again. I'm ordering it again. Sir, I'll send you the link to that book. We need
Sure,
to.
sure. Please
Yeah,
do that.
Yeah.
Laura has been, berating
And
me to read it.
please read it so I have somebody to talk to. It
So,
does dive into
mm,
a lot of the history between Germany and Russia and kind
mhm,
of their love-hate relationship. And
mhm, mhm,
they will always Russia always seeks to ameliorate its relationship with Germany, to maintain regional power, particularly in um, Central Asia and Asia. However, it's always kind of a losing battle for Germany just because of their size, and their sphere of influence is just not as
mhm,
large.
mm,
Um,
mm.
so it should be interesting, but they definitely change their opinions very quickly.
Okay. And also, Germany to cancel the Nord Stream pipeline didn't stop EU from signing its own investment deal with Beijing. Okay, right. You need to underscore that. EU has signed its own deal with Beijing despite US requests for a delay, and isn't going to convince Prime Minister Orban, Viktor Orban, to bring liberal values back to Hungary. That's at your corner, Laura. You need to take it up about Orban. Please
Oh,
enlighten us about Orban.
oh, or
I've been reading about him, but I would prefer you talk about Orban a bit.
again, it's Eastern Europeans having some kind of
Mm,
existential crisis. They suffered at the hands of the communists and
mm,
Russia for
mhm,
so many
mm,
decades.
mhm,
And now it's almost like a little bit of Stockholm syndrome.
mhm.
They
Yeah.
feel safer under the captivity of Russia than kind of plunging themselves completely into the liberalism of Western Europe.
Mm,
Um, so Orban is extremely conservative. Um, he's in conflict with the mayor of Budapest, who's very liberal. Uh, I'm not really sure where most Hungarians sit, but the problem is that Hungary is not the only Eastern European country that has clearly sided with Russia on the side of this kind of geopolitical maneuvering
mm,
again.
mm, mm,
Belarusia has as you know,
Mm.
become a great friend to Putin.
Mhm.
And once again, Russia is kind of making its way westward. Uh,
Mm.
Turkey
Oh, that's again your
Turkey will be an interesting voice in
yes,
this.
yes.
Again, they've gone a lot more conservative
Uh-huh.
than they would most people in Turkey
Uh-huh.
would like.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Mm.
but again, they can't get rid of Tayyip
Mm.
Erdogan, who
Mm.
again has a love-hate relationship with Russia.
Mhm.
So all of this is highly unstable, and
Mhm.
that's really the only thing I can make of it.
Mm.
The book talks about how this same geopolitical positioning, this game of chess,
Mm.
led to World War One,
Mm.
um, which is very concerning.
Mm. Yes, yes, yes. In a sense, because we always kind of studied that, um, that, sorry, we were always kind of taught, I mean, we learned that World War One, World War Two, they're not two wars. That it was one long war because
Yeah,
they
it's an
split out.
extension, that's all.
Yeah, yeah, it's one long war and all that. And a lot of, but this kind of felt that a lot of issues they were able to you know find solutions to these things. And then at that time they didn't have all these ingos, the international organizations, ios, and all that stuff. And all the multilateral institutions and stuff, checks and balances to put in place to stop another war. But I'm not sure now, the way you're talking, how Hungary is having a Stockholm syndrome and all that. It looks like, again, we're getting back to this strain, that the point I was making earlier, that the nation state is under strain. And
It is.
yeah, so when you look at, especially again, Turkey itself, again, it's like it's in an existential crisis of its own, because they still think, I mean, not all people in Turkey, but a good number of them still think in terms of empire. And so that is what is happening. And Putin thinks of empire. And they haven't, it looks like I mean, they really gotten out of the hang of the empire thing. And
No, and
uh,
I think a major asset to the United States was that it had an open dialogue with Turkey for quite a long time. And the
mhm,
Turks really viewed themselves as a separate empire. They are
mhm,
Turkic people. They speak
mhm,
Turkic languages, that they feel that their sphere of influence should extend all the way to Uyghur territory. And
mhm,
they want to work with China, but at the same time, they will not
mhm,
tolerate China's
mhm,
stealing information.
mhm,
Tayyip Erdogan was
mhm,
actually the first global leader to uninvite China from a NATO
mhm,
conference,
mhm,
because they knew that the Chinese would come in and try to steal all
mhm,
of the technology and
mhm,
weaponry
mhm,
for the
mhm,
military.
mhm,
And no one else has been able to stand up to China in in that kind of
mhm,
publicity.
mhm,
But now that the United States has ruined its relationship with
mhm,
Turkey, it really makes me wonder. Uh, Turkey used to identify itself as, the seat of an empire, a Turkic culture, and
mhm,
now they are actively trying to make more connections with Arab cultures.
mhm, mhm,
Um, and they have completely abandoned any EU accession because
mhm,
they're just sick and tired of, um, I don't know what it is, the racism or the again, they do not take kindly to colonial powers telling them to
mhm,
fess up for
mhm,
genocides that the colonial powers also committed.
mhm, mhm.
So they're really calling the West out on their double
Mm.
standards.
Yes, Yes, that is really interesting with Turkey because in one sense they don't have the Arab identity. They're Turkic. They're very particular about it,
Yes.
about this about being Turkic, and then apart from Erdogan standing up to China, he also blasted one of Russia's jets in Syria. He was probably in a very long time, in a couple of decades, like a country blasted a Russian jet, a Turkish jet attacked a Russian jet and blasted it. It was it totally. You remember that episode, right? Yeah. The
Yeah,
yeah yeah.
and to be honest, I mean, both countries are proceeding so hesitantly that
Mhm, mhm,
they're still inclined at this point to come to an agreement over
mhm.
any
They
kind
have
of
to. They have
mistakes
to.
like that.
Yeah. So to really look at this, I mean, you should see the maps of the region: Black Sea, the Bosphorus, and all the way um, to Crimea. Uh, what's that sea called, Laura? Um,
Caspian
yeah, no, no, not Caspian. Caspian is
or
a little
Black?
Black Sea.
There's Black Sea.
Yeah, Black Sea, and that's where the Russian which fleet of Russia's is there? Oh my goodness,
Uh,
I'm a little jaded. I haven't been, I'm forgetting the Russia's fleet in Crimea, in
it's in it's based out of Sebastopol
Sevastopol,
mostly. Yeah.
The Sevastopol fleet. Actually,
Yeah.
one time I really wanted to write about. I wanted to write an article on Sevastopol. The title of the article was Sevastopol Strategy of the
Hmm.
entire the geopolitics surrounding Russia's annexation of Crimea. So anyways, that's for another. We'll still keep it that thought tagging for later. Okay, so let's get back to the article. Uh, so yeah, in a sense, again, sir, we just want to say that the Turkey's role here again is it's all again extremely unstable. Uh, so because in one sense also it wants to be a leader of the Islamic world. It wants to
Correct.
retake over the leadership of the Islamic world in
The
that sense.
caliphate.
Yeah, they want the caliphate back, and
It
so.
it it really views itself as above the caliphate,
Mm, mm,
and it views itself as above how the Arabs have implemented
mm,
Islam as a religion. Um,
Yeah, in a
so
way, they may be right because the Arabs were always pirates, you know.
mm.
they were.
Yeah,
they just they just happen to be on the right side in global conflict.
right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
Mm, mm, mm,
Yeah, and the interesting thing was that the Turks were very much aligned with Austria-Hungary, which
Yeah,
mm,
true, very
again
true.
fell apart
mm,
thanks to Russian,
mm,
uh, the Russian sphere of influence, and also the British and the Russians would kind of come together to take out any area that they felt was becoming
mm,
too powerful,
mm,
like Austria-Hungary or now Turkey. So I have no idea what's going to happen. This
mm,
is the first
mm.
time.
So just to why we were emphasize on Turkey is because we rarely hear about Turkey in India's news, but it's all over when you read in you're reading stuff about Europe and all that, because this is all over the place. Turkey's all over the place. I'm just going to tell you a story here. You remember Salim Gökçel?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, he was our classmate, sir.
Hmm.
Laura, you met him?
You told me,
I
you
Yes,
told
remember.
me about him. Yeah.
yeah. You met Salim?
Yes,
Uh,
I know him.
uh,
I don't think we were in classes together, but I
okay, yeah,
remember his name.
right. He is um, the grandnephew or great grandnephew of the foreign minister of the last sultan
No.
of the Ottoman Empire.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. True blue blood. And he and again this foreign minister was again he was also the foreign minister under Ataturk, President Ataturk. So he saw the uh, from the he saw the movement from empire, oversaw the movement from empire to nation state, and he was there. And um, also is the other as his other uncle is Ahmed Ertugrul. You remember? You know the name of the guy who owns Universal Records? Is
No.
His name is Ahmed something. He gave Rolling Stones. Mm, the guy, the British Elon Musk guy. Who was that guy? Uh,
Universal Music?
Universal, yeah, this big record label, Universal. He
Whose name?
gave. Uh, Anyways, okay, he was really big in the music industry. All right, so he's a lot of guys, were and one of his this record magnate's brother, I'm not sure, older brother or younger brother, was also Turkey's ambassador to the United States. All right, and so in the late 60s and 70s, and so he died in the States. And so when he died in the States, um, what the United States did was they said, because at that time they were quite known because they were all doing this thing between Soviet Union and Russia and all that. So it was a very important figure in U.S. foreign policy circles. So they bought his body in a aircraft carrier from United States. They said, we want to give our respect to this man. I think you understand where this is going.
Yeah.
So they said, okay, we're going to give great respect to this guy, to this man who's done so much for Turkish American relations. So we're going to send his body back in an aircraft carrier. So in that way, the United States was able to enter into the Black Sea. And with that started it is like from that episode, American military asset was in the Black Sea. From that point onward, the Cold War started. So that incident is considered the starting of the Cold War. So
Okay.
we all read it in history books, but the body belonged to Salim's uncle. So, so let's just, so that's the role we just wanted to. We're talking about Turkey so much because Turkey had such an oversized role during the Cold War, and when you were reading about studying Cold War, Turkey is everywhere, and because they were actually a wall, it was a wall against Soviet expansion, and now all that is spoiled, right? All that relationship is gone, I believe,
I,
between.
I really
Um,
I really feel like I was the most blue collar person in Paris, but
mhm,
it translated into something interesting when I lived in
mhm.
Turkey, that's for
Mm,
sure.
mhm, mm, mm, mm. So that's the thing, right? As the United States and China compete to promote rival visions for the world order, how are other states likely to respond? Autocratic nationalists in some countries may prefer China's explicit rejection of liberal values and ideas about sovereignty. But Beijing's increasingly bellicose behavior and its willingness to punish others for even minor transgressions has sparked growing concerns about what a more China-centric order might be like. You were just talking about this, Laura.
Yeah, I think
Mm.
this is really Westerners speaking for China because
Uh-huh.
even though the Chinese military is extremely powerful, they
Uh,
are very cautious about using it.
uh-huh.
Um,
Mm.
and it doesn't fit their strategy. Their
Mm-hmm.
strategy is low profile exploitation. It is
Mm-hmm.
never open conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's decades away from matching China's military to match U.S. military. It's decades away to what it was, and we don't know after many decades what would U.S. military look like. But to even match U.S. military to what it is right now, China is still decades away. It's just
Oh
not
yeah,
there.
I mean they
Yeah.
think in
Mm,
a
mm,
hundred
mm,
years
mm,
minimum.
mm, mm, mm,
And they, I think they also in Beijing understand that there could be a bit of a powder keg within their own
mhm,
sphere of power.
mhm, mhm, mm. Right. So Americans may exaggerate the benevolent nature of US hegemony, but its geographic distance from others and relatively benign intentions made its position of primacy more acceptable to many other states than the overall distribution of power might suggest. Of course, he's right there. No, they're not on anybody's borders, so they're not really worried about a major power being on their border. So, as I argued during the unipolar era, US power did not provoke as much opposition as one might have expected because it was separated from the other major power centers by vast oceans and had no interest in territorial expansion. Most countries in Eurasia worried more about each other than they did about the United States, which also made US support more desirable and its hegemonic position more tolerable. Hmm.
I don't think he's
Ah,
mentioning again the important thing that
hmm,
realists consistently fail to mention. And
hmm,
we were not interested in territory expansion. We are
hmm.
interested in corporate
Yes,
colonization.
yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Yes.
yeah. Realists simply ignore this aspect. They're just more on the ground. We're like boots on the ground kind of analysis. So, yet even like-minded allies who welcome U.S. leadership want it to be exercised more judiciously. Let me reread that again. I didn't get it. Yet, even like minded allies who welcome US leadership wanted to be exercised more judiciously. Okay. It's not US hegemony per se that bothers them, it is the excessive exploitation of hegemonic privilege. They don't like it when the United States blithely violates the rules of the system, as it did when it left the gold standard in 1971. That's when the Bretton Woods system ended. Yeah, or when it invaded Iraq in 2003, and especially when the consequences are at least as severe for them as for the United States itself. They don't like the United States using the SWIFT system and other institutions of the global financial order to sanction states it happens to be at odds with, and especially when it threatens third parties with secondary sanctions if they don't fall into line. Ironically, what US allies really want is for the United States to take its oft repeated commitment to a rules based order more seriously. Hmm. So that's the thing. Okay. Ironically, what US allies really want is for the United States to take its. Oh, yeah, I just read it. In the short term, US efforts to promote its preferred set of rules will benefit from Biden and Blinken's commitment to active and constructive diplomacy, in sharp contrast to the bullying bombast of the Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Merely showing up at major global forums, treating other participants with respect, showing a degree of empathy for others' concerns are going to play well. If Beijing remains committed to its self-defeating wolf warrior diplomacy, a US charm offensive will be even more effective.
I've
Mm,
never heard of such an oxymoron in my
mm,
life.
mm, mm.
We have
Yeah.
charm.
Yeah. Of all people. Yeah. Mm.
He's very generous in his
Right,
opinion.
right. Mm, 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 mm. Well, what he's saying is his meaning of charm here is about using soft power,
Yeah.
because people like when even if he's a bully, if he comes and says hello and taps on his shoulder, people would like that. So this is what I think he's actually meaning, the usage of more soft power and stuff. But more adroit at diplomacy can only take a country so far. Over the longer term, the contest to set the rules of global dealings will be determined primarily by which country, the United States or China, has more hard power. Okay, this is totally realist theory. The United States could dominate the construction of the post-war liberal order because its economy was producing nearly 50% of the gross world product, and the other major powers were in ruins and in hock to Uncle Sam. Hard power, in the form of economic and military strength, still buys its possessors a lot of difference. Look at all the world leaders who were clearly alarmed, angered, belittled, and disgusted by Trump, yet treated him with a respect he did not deserve. Why? Because the United States was still the 800-pound gorilla, and it made little sense to needlessly provoke its wrath. If Chinese leader Xi Jinping's loftiest ambitions are realized, and China eventually occupies the commanding economic heights of the 21st century, it still won't be able to take over the world. But such a position will give it a great deal of influence over the rules of the international system, because other states will be less willing to defy it openly and forced to adapt some of the practices to conform to Chinese preferences. Even states that are actively balancing against China militarily may choose to accommodate it in, in other ways. By contrast, if the United States keeps pace economically and retains key advantages in most of the core technologies on which future productivity depends, then the 21st century order is likely to favor Washington's preferences more than Beijing's. Again, it all depends, amounts to what you were earlier saying about core competency in technology. Hmm. Here's the good news for Americans. Undertaking the reforms that will be needed to retain the necessary economic strength would be good for the United States in any case. And it would make sense even if China were weaker than it is today and pose no challenge to the current order. Okay. In short, the United States is in one, but it makes it the more reason that United States really go about and start doing the reforms that are necessary. You know, in short, the United States is in one of those happy moments where what is good for the country at home will also be good for its standing and influence abroad. Underscores what you said. So, Stephen Walt is the Robert and Renee Belfer Professor of International Relations at Harvard University. So, this is the thing. I so we keep doing these things, Laura. I and Mr. Ramu. Uh, so we usually have a discussion or two a week when but mostly they are about the Indian new about Indian issues that are currently gripping the country, and So I hope you enjoyed the discussion. Both
Yes,
of
thank
you,
you.
both of you. Great.
I am interested to hear more about, kind of an Indian perspective on these things, because I still think that a lot of different debates are being left out. And
Hmm.
uh, for example, the US tech industry cannot be acknowledged without also talking about India's contributions to it.
Mm.
So there's another opportunity for diplomatic relations on that front as well.
Mm.
And the tech industry has been one of the main areas to open up immigration to the US,
Hmm.
whereas other industries are
Hmm.
actively trying to shut it down.
Hmm. Mm.
So,
Well, it's a very hard question to answer, about the Indian perspectives on the global order, because most Indians think that um, Modi is setting the global global order.
It's not like that, but the problem is the sheer population of India is the biggest threat to India now because of the poverty and the illiteracy. Apart from setting up a lot of universities and engineering colleges, we lack in a lot of technology. We don't have skills here in India. That is the biggest problem. One is the language barrier. Second thing is poverty. Third thing is lack of faculty is also very bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the reason why technologically India can only a few maybe uh, one not even 1%, maybe a few thousands of students who really excel in their colleges may come to US, but I don't think India will be a threat technologically to the US. Never, because we don't have the core facilities here. We don't have the.
not so much a threat, but they definitely are an asset.
Yeah, there may
Um,
be maybe only a few thousands, not to the extent of. And I don't think now Philippines is also competing very fastly. China is doing that. China is also learning English now.
yeah.
Why
Philippines,
the reason a lot of Indians were able to immigrate to the U.S. was because of
the
English
language, yeah, language, yes,
language.
yes.
Because for a lot of us, English. I think me and Ramu are more comfortable talking in English than on our
Local language, yeah.
local languages. Yeah,
It's very hard to understand the local language here, you know.
we're more we're more fluent in English than
That's I saw that when I was there. That was funny.
yeah. So that's one thing, and recently one of our colleagues also, um, I was telling you about her name is Swati. She was asking me a question and something, and I asked her a question back, asking her how many universities are in India and how many universities are in the US. And somehow she thought that we had enough of